Okay, so first question is for people who don't know who Michael is, who are you? What's your backstory? What's your background, and what led you to the moment that you are right now?
Sure. Well, I'm a human being that was lucky enough to know what he wanted to do since he was a little kid, since I was maybe 12 or 13, which was
Hmm.
to be a filmmaker and to be a humanitarian. I didn't know what that term humanitarian was, but I knew I wanted to at least try and do my part to help make the world around me a better place, make the world in general a better place. I just as a kid, I had no idea how I would not only achieve any of those things, but even start. How do you become a filmmaker?
Yeah.
How do you become a humanitarian? How do you impact the world all around you? And I lived a fear-based life where I just used kind of a procrastination to enable myself to stay in a box and really not expand or grow or really do any of these things. And so I never spent a day of my life really trying to make any of those dreams come true.
Hmm.
As I approached 50, for a number of reasons, that certainly a major contributor, I fell into a really bad depression for lasted a year and a half, 2 years. And when I came out of that depression, I just made a promise to myself that I wouldn't let fear kind of stop me from doing what I want to do and being who I want to be and trying to do the things that were important to me. And so at 50, when I conceived of the film Humanity Stoked and my children's foundation, the What Stops You, the Road Foundation, I literally started on those projects with nothing, from nowhere. I never knew anyone in the charity space, really. I never knew a professional filmmaker or anyone in the professions that we talk to people about in the film, professional skateboarding, science, art, music, education, and so it was really born out of absolutely nothing but just a drive and a passion to help do these things. And that's my story.
And you've touched on a lot, and like mental health is a big focus of mine. I've tried to be a lot more open about stuff I've dealt with, anxiety and depression, and I think speaking with people like you, other athletes, other personalities who share what they've gone through and to get to the point that they're at now is fascinating, right? And it can give other people hope, that you can do what, if you have a dream, you can do it, right?
Yeah,
And in sharing this story and sharing other people's stories like you is very important. And I think it's great to have you on here today to share that.
I appreciate that. In the film, we talk about a lot of issues,
Mhm.
all types of issues of xenophobia, for example, and equality issues, whether it's race or gender.
Mhm.
If it's about homophobia and gender
Yeah.
inequality, but we talk about the importance of art and music and education. We talk about environmental issues, mental health issues, depression, addiction, recovery, and we talk a lot about fear. These are all issues that affect the human experience. These are issues that affect human beings in societies around the world, regardless of who you are or what you do.
Yeah.
And I know I've been fortunate enough to travel the world the last year at film festivals and screen the film and give talks, all over the world. And I could tell you that in many places in the United States and certainly in other countries, the cultures have developed in such a way where it's difficult for people to talk openly about things such as mental health and depression,
Mhm.
about their fears or insecurities, and that's especially true for men more so than women. And I know people have expressed a lot of gratitude in seeing some of their heroes on film talk about these things. It makes it a little bit easier for them to acknowledge that within their own communities, their own families, with their own friends. So yeah, for sure. And they through my foundation, the What Stops You.org Foundation, what that organization does is sends people, speakers, to schools and youth groups to talk to kids, talk to teaching staffs about how to relate to kids regarding the understanding of fear and how not to let those fears unjustly shape our perspectives, guide our hands in life, and hold us back really, from living purposeful lives, meaningful lives. And so that's what the film is about, and that's what the What Stops You.org Foundation is all about.
Yeah. And yeah, the film, it's really, obviously you get a lot of memorabilia behind you, a lot of skateboards. It's obviously a huge passion, and you know what, it's a who's who of extreme sports and skateboarding in your video. So how, and this is mostly for me too, is how do you even put something like this together that is so, there's so many people involved, so many high profile people that are sharing their stories with you, and how do you even get to that point where you're able to turn it into a film? Like, it's got to be so much work, the interviews, the putting it together. I can't even imagine what it takes to do this. And then you got the movie festivals and you're sharing this everywhere. It's unbelievable to me. How do you even get to this point? I don't even know where to start.
It's actually a very important question, maybe more so, or even in ways that you may not even realize when you asked it, because for one thing, yeah, it's daunting, because from the very beginning and through now, I don't even have a personal assistant. There are no other producers on this film, so I have to wear a lot of hats. There are of course other people involved in the production of the film, but in terms of producing it, yeah, it's just me. And so the reason why the question is so important, because the concept of not knowing where to begin, not standing at point A and looking at point Z, which is on some mountaintop, and thinking, I don't know how I'm going to get there, it's so daunting. It's those types of not only fears, but those types of uncertainties regarding how do you get from point A to point Z, that prevent a lot of people, maybe most people, certainly myself included, prevents them from even taking the first step. And so one of the things that I had to do early on is make a conscious decision that I would just have confidence, have a little blind faith that I would be able to figure out where the bridges are and how to cross them when I get to them, and just start taking one step at a time. We started filming in Cuba. I say we, but back then it was just myself. Literally bought a used camera, bought a plane ticket to Cuba, and made some connections with some people that I wanted to have to go there with me, and some people that I wanted to interview when I was there, and not stress out overly on things that I couldn't possibly know at the time, and said, let me just get from point A to point B, and while I'm on my way to point B, I'll think about point C and D, but not E and F and so on and so forth, because that becomes overwhelming and you just lock in fear and you don't do anything. And I did that for decades, creatively, professionally in my life. And looking back, it's crystal clear, on how dangerous that is, and by dangerous, I just mean, if you, I'm not one of these people that suggest everyone has to grow and everyone has to go on a journey and, all this shit, and just, I'm not here to preach to anyone, but there are a lot of people, myself included, that do want that. For a lot of people, that is very important to them. And so I'm speaking to those people, that, yeah, you just can't, you have to stop worrying about everything. Just start moving forward, and don't just like throw all caution into the wind. You have to really, a lot of late nights, constantly, gears are turning. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? But in the immediate, you have to start moving forward, and you'll find that what you thought was just insurmountable, what you thought was just impenetrable, it's not so much, not nearly as difficult as you thought it was. That's been my experience, and I know for so many others like me. And so I hope people come away from the film and with that understanding.
No, fantastic. Thanks for sharing that, Michael, because I thought about that a few times. I'm watching your interviews, and I'm really excited to to watch it when it comes out, and just to see everyone hears the Tony Hawks in this, but there are so many people with so much insight, and their stories are so personal. Like it really is. It's fascinating.
That-
I can't wait to share this. It's so cool, right? So
Thank you.
so yeah, and the last question, it's more of a two-part question. So did you ever think, part one, did you ever think it would get this big and you'd ever get to this point when you first thought about this? Second piece is, 50, 100 years from now, what are people saying about Michael Cohen when they look back at this?
Well, for the first part of that question, definitely not. I'm an optimistic person, maybe foolishly optimistic, but this is one of those stories where, something became exponentially bigger, exponentially better, exponentially more important, and more meaningful than I had in my most wild optimistic fantasies of what can happen when a 50-year-old dude who's never read a book on filmmaking decides, hey, I want to go out and make a movie with no money, no experience, no equipment, and no connections. And then this thing happens with this epic cast of 70 people. And
Wow.
yeah, definitely not. It is the understatement of a year to say it is far exceeded my most wild fantasy,
Mhm.
what it could be. And in terms of what people think of me 50 years from now or 100 years from now, for one thing, I hope it's not, that opinion is not based entirely on this one project or the What's Top
Yep.
Secret organization, because I hope to continue along this path in life. But in an ideal world, and I have no ego in this, so I'm not suggesting that that I'm worthy of what I'm about to say. But what I would hope is that I'm able to live the rest of my life, and if people were to look back on what I've done with my time here, that I'm simply someone that tried and hopefully successfully to help make a positive difference in the world around me and in people's lives. That would be ideal.
Fantastic. And that's the last question, Michael. So again, thank you for this. It's been about 10 minutes, and there's so much positivity that comes from you. It's a great conversation. I thank you for that.